We're going to graph some linear equations that are in slope-intercept form. So slope-intercept form is just y equals mx plus b, where each of those values represents something. It's important to note that this will always be y and this will always be x, but the m and the b will actually be values. The m represents slope. So just as we were practicing finding slope before, the m represents the slope of the line, and we'll talk about in this section how to use that slope. The b represents the y-intercept, and the y-intercept, remember, is 0 right or left and b units up or down. So when we graph, we're going to start by plotting our point at 0, b, and then we're going to use our slope to move rise over run. So of course this will make much more sense once we actually try to do it. So let's look at this first example. We're going to graph using the slope and y-intercept because this is in slope-intercept form. So remember, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. So y is by itself, which means that m must be 2/3 and b must be -2. Y equals mx plus b. So what we're going to do to graph is we're going to start at -2, which is our b value. So we're going to start at the point 0, -2. On my graph, that's right here. So again, I got that value by this, which is the value that is not being multiplied by x in my equation. And then we're going to use our slope to move up or down and right or left based on the slope of 2/3. So my slope is always rise over run, and in this case my slope is 2/3, which means I'm going to rise 2 from here, up 1, 2, and run +3, which puts me right there. So this is now the slope of my line. So this is one way to graph, and I think this is a lot easier than that point plotting method, because if point plotting, we would have to make up values for x, plug them in, and find the values for y, and we would probably end up with some fractions in there. As you can see, at 1, it doesn't go through at a whole number. At x equals 2, it doesn't go through at a whole number. So you're always sort of risking it when you're trying to do point plotting. So this is an easier way. Start at b and then move the values of your slope. Let's try this one. We're graphing the equation y equals -3/4 x plus 1. So again, this is my b value, which means I'm going to start at 0, 1. I always start on the y-axis because this is the y-intercept. My slope is -3/4, so be careful on this one. My rise over run includes a negative. So notice there's a negative out front. So you basically need to choose to either put it on the top of your fraction or put it on the bottom of your fraction, and it doesn't matter which one you do. I usually put it on the top. So from my starting point at 0, 1, I would go a rise of -3, so down 1, 2, 3, and then a run of +4. And then I would connect the dots. Now, there's no wrong way to do that, so if I would have put 3 over -4 instead, that would have meant from this point I should have gone up 3, but then to the left 4, and notice that point is still on the line that I drew. So it's okay either way that you put the negative. What you don't want to do is don't put -3 over -4, because that's two negatives, and a negative divided by a negative turns it into a positive. So this would not work, so don't put the negative on both. Y equals 4x. Notice there's no b value, so it's essentially like having a +0. So when I start, I'm going to start at the point 0, 0, or the origin. My slope is 4. Now on all of the other examples, my slope has been a fraction because we all know that slope is rise over run. So how do I write 4 as a fraction? 4 over 1. So from this point, I have a rise of 4 units and a run of 1 unit. Again, if you're trying to graph this and you're running out of room, you can always call this -4 over -1, because a negative divided by a negative is a positive, and that could give me that point if I go down 4 and to the left 1. And notice all of those are still in the same straight line. Hopefully you can make a straight line better than I can. This is one for you to try on your own, so give it a shot and then press play. For this one, I'm going to start at 0, comma b, which is 0, comma 4. So 0, comma 4. My slope is negative 2/3. So my rise over run is negative 2/3. Notice I moved that negative to the 2, which means go down 2 to the right 3, and then I'm going to connect the dots to make a straight line.